Welcome to another exciting episode of Zebadextra v. Phebo.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting.
It is. So, if you're new to the podcast, what we do is we take a book or a movie or TV shows. Mm-hmm. We watch/read them, and then we give you the deets.
Yep, our thoughts and opinions on said, in this case, book. What are we reading this time?
Tonight we are reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And this is by V.E. Schwab. Mm-hmm. And it's about a girl.
And?
Her dog.
No, it's also about a boy.
And a boy. There's a girl and a boy and another girl, and there's a cat.
So anyway, if you could sum this up in one sentence.
In one sentence, huh? I would have to say this book is about one girl's struggle to not be tied down to the restrictions that were placed on women in the 1700s. Uh-huh. Is that...
And that gives you almost no idea about what this book is going to be about.
None.
Which is perfect because it's really, this book goes everywhere and you don't want any spoilers.
It does. And I will say, if you are like me and you generally don't like books or movies that do a lot of the whoop, 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 whoop in time.
Yeah, it does a lot.
Don't ever read or watch movies that Phoebe picks because hers are all like that. This one is about this girl named Addie LaRue. She is...
Are you giving your spoiler review now?
No. I was just kind of giving like a little overview.
Oh, more than a sentence.
More than a sentence.
Just no spoilers still.
Yeah, no spoilers. And it's set in the 1700s. In France. What was the name of it?
It's not coming to me.
Because I know one was Le Mans and Vion.
Vion.
Ah, yes. In Vion, France. Vion. And this young lady, she's of marrying age, and she's looking at her mother, and she's seeing like what her life is going to be like, and she doesn't like it. And so this is her kind of rebellion, and the consequences of it is what this book is about.
This book does involve some fantasy elements.
It does.
Because not so much like the Fae and other books that I've made Tim read, but it involves like gods.
Yes.
And there's a lot of jumping back and forth in time, like Tim says. But I find that mechanic perpetuates the mystery because you have a big old mystery and then it jumps back and it reveals a little bit more. And then it comes back in time and then it goes back and it reveals a little bit more. And you're just constantly going, oh.
Yeah, I see that. I see where you're coming from on that. And it also does kind of correlate the happenings in the modern day with the history. And so I can see why the choices she's making now are being influenced by the choices she made back then.
Yeah.
However, what's wrong with, running through it all back then and then hitting the now? And you know what? It's a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge fan of it. But I will say that this book was not that bad. It was actually a pretty good read. It was fairly easy to follow even with that jumping back and forth. And I think one of the reasons why was some of the books you read when the author jumps back into the past, you're like, what does this have to do with the storyline? However, when this author jumps into the past, you go, oh, okay, so this is going on right now. Oh, that's what happened back then, and you can see the influence on the moment.
It also helps because at the heading of each of those jump back or forward, it says like blah 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 France August 1719 or whatever. Like she always
Yeah.
says where you're at and what the date is.
1714.
Well, it moved. It wasn't always 1714.
It did move, but we opened in 1714,
Okay.
Vion, France. And now we're going to delve a little deeper. We're going to go into the spoilers.
Before we do, did you love this, like it, meh, or hated it?
I like this.
You like
I like
it? Okay.
this. It was almost borderline love. Almost.
I liked it into the last, 2 hours of the book, and then I loved it.
Okay, so what I will say is I did really enjoy the ending to this book. A lot of times, and you can ask Phoebe, we'll be sitting there watching a movie, reading a book, and I'll be like, oh, this is how it ends. Mm-hmm. And
well,
that's
you said
how
you
it
guessed
ends.
how it ended.
So I guessed that was one of the possible endings that I could see from the way the author had built up the story. I'm glad to see that's the ending he used.
She?
Is V.E. Schwab a lady? Oh, I apologize, V.E. Schwab.
So if you think that sounds interesting and you don't want us to tell you the plot any more than that, push pause, come back after you've read, and discuss with us.
Yeah.
Leave your thoughts in the comments.
I had actually heard of this before.
Wow.
That you had introduced it. But it wasn't one that I ever really thought to read, but I am glad that we did get a chance to read it.
And it only took us 1 month to read this book.
Yeah, well, that was a bit my fault. I got a little delayed and sidetracked on things.
So we've decided that the expectation of Tim taking notes on books while he's trying to do his work week is just not realistic.
Right.
So whenever he's leading a discussion, there won't be set notes
Right.
I like to take, so it might be a little looser. So we're going to try that out today.
Yeah, a little looser-gooser.
So why don't you go ahead and get started, sir?
All right, so here we go with spoilers. So if you don't want the spoilers, hit the pause and come on back later. So like I said, this takes place in 1714 originally. The young lady, Addie LaRue, one of the distinguishing features that's on her, and this is throughout the entire book that they talk about it and they mention it, is this young lady has 7 freckles on her face. And that's literally the distinguishing marks that they talk about with her. This young lady was growing up. She was a bit of a free spirit. She would go to the market with her father, even though her mother didn't think it was ladylike. And, she really enjoyed that freedom. As she gets a little closer to her marrying age, her mother kind of puts a foot down and says, no, that's not ladylike. You're going to start prepping to be a woman. And in that, it means no trips with dad to the markets. But the one thing that she did have was she really enjoyed drawing with charcoal.
And her father was a woodworker, right?
Her father was a woodworker. And they go into detail on some of the woodworking that he did and, some of the figurines that he made. And it was really, really nice to see that. At one point, they decide that Addie is of marrying age.
She's 23, I believe.
I believe so. Which
would probably be late for marriage.
I was going to say, at that age, you're in that.
I think she was
time.
dragging her feet, and her parents were like, "Nah, you have to."
Yeah, and she's dreading this. She does not want to end up like her mother. She sees her mother, and her mother's always scowling, and she's kind of broken down. Her fingers hurt so much she can't even stitch, and
she doesn't want to just be caring for kids her whole life.
Yeah, she doesn't want to become a baby factory.
Also, she doesn't want to be stuck in her town.
Right. So, she, it's the typical scenario for a teenage girl or boy. At the time, Vion, France, sounds like it was just your regular, average, normal, small town, podunk kind of place. What?
We don't know that it was podunk.
I mean, it sounds like it.
Okay.
Anyhow, so she has a friend.
Isabella?
She has a friend, Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
And Isabel has already been married. She has a kid already, and she sees how that's weighing on her, and so she's really, really dreading this. And one of the women who work around town, what was her name again?
Yvette?
No. Crap.
Are we talking about the old lady?
Yeah.
I thought her name was Yvette.
I don't think it was. Estelle.
There we go. Okay. So, she doesn't work around town. She's just like the old witch of the town.
Yeah, she's the old lady. Every town has that old lady or old man that's really creepy, kind of, and no one wants to go deal with them because they're a witch.
But Adeline likes her.
Adeline really likes her. And this Estelle is... one of the differences between Estelle and her parents is that her parents are firm believers in God. They go to church every week, and they're the Catholic, I guess Catholic.
I don't
know. And Estelle honors the old gods.
Plus, she's never been married. She's
Right.
not tied down to anyone.
Right. And so, Addie kind of looks up to that, and so. Throughout, her childhood, Estelle has told her that, if you pray to the old gods, you have to give them a token, and then they may answer your prayers. But never pray to the gods who come out after dark.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And so we go forward a little bit, and it's her wedding day.
Yeah, she's betrothed to this guy she's not interested in.
Yeah, well, I mean, who is interested in the guys that they're betrothed to?
Some people, I'm sure.
Were you, I hope? Anyhow. So it's her wedding day. Leading up to this wedding day, she has prayed to all the gods of light that she can, offering everything that she has.
Mm-hmm. She's been trying to get somebody to answer her and get her out of this position.
Exactly. And so she's running away from the wedding.
So it's on the actual wedding day, right?
Yeah, it's on the actual wedding day. And she runs into the woods, and she has one item of value left, and it's her most valued possession. And it is a wooden ring that her father had carved for her. And she gets on her knees, and she buries this ring in the dirt, and she prays to have somebody come and help her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she gets her answer.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, she didn't realize it, but the sun was still set, or was setting in the area where she was praying. And so she got one of the gods of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't realize it right away, but she realizes that later. Anyhow, she's trying to make a deal with this god of the dark. And at first, he's like, well, what do you want? And she's like, I can't remember exactly what she says, but basically it's to live forever or something like that.
Live forever.
Live forever and be free.
Oh, that was her first thing, and he's like, you can't have that?
Yeah, he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so anyhow, they settle on a deal where she will be free until she's ready to give up her soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the book starts taking a turn. And that's kind of where the back and forth really starts.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So it starts in the past, and then we jump forward to 2014?
Yeah, and then we jump forward, and we're jumping back, and the rest of the book, we're jumping back and forth. So basically, then it goes forward in time, and
I think maybe don't worry so much about that. Why don't you tell it kind of the chunks of the past and then chunks of the 4 that you remember.
So I should tell it like she wrote it.
Well, it goes so frequently back and forth. I don't think we're going to remember.
That's true. And I wasn't really going to go into the whole, right now, this line here, that line there.
So when it starts jumping forward, it talks about the different relationships she's had in the recent history.
Right.
And it talks about how an important thing is, well, you go ahead and say, but it just is demonstrating the important thing.
So what happens now is we jump to the future. We're in 2014.
Doesn't she go back to her home first, though, before it jumps to the future?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
So,
no, I think actually,
sure?
I thought it jumped forward to the future and with Toby Marsh.
I thought she had the instant ramifications of going back home. Anyway, go tell it.
Okay, so anyhow, in fact, I think I will do it your way a little bit more.
Okay.
So in one of these flashbacks, we see her, and she's in her wedding gown, and she goes and sees... Did she go to her mom and dad's first, or does she go to Isabel's?
I think she goes to mom and dad.
Okay, so she goes to her mom and dad's, and it's really confusing for her because she walks in the door, and her mother is like all afraid, like, "Who are you?" And she convinces her mother that she needs help, and then her mother is like, "Okay, well, hold on, let me get my husband." And
so she leaves the room.
Shuts the door, and when she opens the door back up, she's like, "Who are you?" Right? So her mother, after leaving her presence, doesn't remember her anymore. And that's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout this book.
Yeah.
No one remembers her. So anytime she leaves a room and breaks that line of sight, it starts to rewind the spell a little bit, and people will forget her. So she runs off from her mom and dad's house, and she also goes to her friend Isabel's house. And like I said...
Oh, Isabel, yeah, and Estelle, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit because I'm kind of giving you the background that we'll discuss in the future a little bit. But she goes and talks to Isabel, and Isabel's like, "Oh, are you lost? Do you hurt? Do you need help?" And, so she's like, "Yes, I do." And she goes with Isabel, and Isabel does the same thing. She actually helps her take off some clothes, and she's like cleaning up, and she leaves line of sight, and she comes back in with her husband, and there's Addie holding their baby, and they have no idea who she is. So they run her off.
So not only does everybody she meets forget her when they leave, they don't have any memory of her from before. So her parents had never had children.
Right.
So when she struck a deal with the old god, you have to be careful with the dark gods because there's always a cost to these spells, and they're tricky. So the way that he made it so that she would never be bound to anybody was nobody would remember her.
No one ever remembers her. So anyhow, she steals a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And
so I don't think the specifics are this are too important. She has a number of encounters with people that she loves, like Estelle.
Right.
Nobody remembers her.
Absolutely.
And she's learned that she's like, wow.
Yeah. So
I am in a pickle.
Yeah, she's in it. We go to present day, and when I say present day, I'm talking 2014. She wakes up or she went to bed with a guy named Toby Marsh. He's a singer that she's kind of fallen for, it seems like, in the beginning of the book, that she really is attracted to. And honestly, when I first started reading this book, I thought that was like the main character was Toby Marsh. I thought he was going to be the love interest through this. He's not. Spoiler alert. I guess I should say those before, huh?
Well, this whole thing is spoiler
I
alert.
know. So anyhow, she leaves, and basically what she does with Toby, and she does this with a lot of people, is if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, it's quite similar to that, except it's not the same day, it's every day.
Yeah, and she doesn't get transported to where she was to start the day the same every day.
Right.
So now she's in his house, in his bed, and he's like, hello, stranger in my bed. So basically in present day, a lot of people assume we had a one-night stand. I have no memory of this experience. I was drunk or high or whatever. Yeah. But so that makes it so every relationship that she tries to form, she has to reestablish it every single day. Yeah.
Right. And there's a couple instances of that where she talks about that.
Yeah, some people that works with, some people it doesn't.
Yeah. But the other nice thing about it is, and this is part of the book where she, one of the rich noble ladies has like this path she walks every day. And so she has like this ritual set up where she...
Like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, where she bumps into her, and every day she learns a little bit more until eventually she's...
Has enough information to say the right thing to get the end that she needs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the other thing about this book is there's always talk about these different art pieces. Mm-hmm. And...
A lot of the chapter starts.
Yeah, they'll start and they'll talk about these different pieces of art and who it was by, who they thought was the influence, and the estimated values.
Mm-hmm. You don't understand for a little while why they're doing that.
Yeah, you don't understand until it's probably the last third of the book.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so she's met this Toby Marsh, and she decides that, I guess I should also say that one of her big things throughout this entire book is she started out knowing her letters, right? But she didn't necessarily know how to read.
Oh, I forgot that part.
Yeah. And
so her dad had taught her a few things, even though it wasn't really normal for girls to be learned at the time.
Right. So she knew the letters. She didn't understand like how to put them all together. And that comes into play a little bit later because after she leaves Valmont. Vion, she goes to Le Mans, and then she goes to Paris. And in Paris, she runs into this guy, Remy, and she's dressed as a boy to kind of allow herself a little bit of freedom of movement and
maybe a little bit more safety.
Yeah, and she's got like this. At this point, she's got this like picnic planned for her anniversary or something, and she has a pot of honey, which according to at that time I guess was a big deal, was to have a pot of honey. And Remy bumps into her and knocks it to the ground and shatters. And anyhow, so her and Remy spend the rest of the day together like fast friends, and it just they have a great time, and they end up having sex. And when he wakes up in the morning, he has no recollection of her. Mm-hmm. But during the night before they had went to bed, he showed her, was it the Odyssey? I can't remember what the book was. Anyhow, he has a book. It was by Voltaire.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was.
That's not the Odyssey.
I know. I realized that after I remembered it was Voltaire.
Well, doesn't he take her to an event where Voltaire is?
Yeah. So anyhow, he takes her to a club where Voltaire walks into, and she's just like kind of absorbed in the fact that, well, Remy was absorbed with the fact that Voltaire was there because he's a huge fan. She was absorbed with the fact that men have freedoms that haven't even been considered for women. Like they can just sit around and talk and discuss and philosophize, and so she's taken a big interest in this.
Is Remy an artist too?
He actually, his father was a book typesetter, I believe. And so that's what Remy actually does in the here and now. Because remember, he has the ink stains on his fingers, and but that's what he's doing in France. He's like the sixth son, and Dad had no work for him, and he decided, well, I would much rather be in Paris where the action's happening than in a podunk little town.
So, since you mentioned her anniversary, why don't you tell us a little bit about this god that she struck a deal with and what this whole notion of an anniversary is?
Okay, I can do that. So, when she was first drawing with her charcoals, she drew up this picture of a man, and she's been fantasizing her entire
young adult life.
Yeah, about being with this person. And
it's just a made-up person that she thought was attractive, and she named him Luke, right?
Yes, she did. Lucas.
I don't know, Luke.
Yeah, she calls him Luke. Anyhow, so whenever he shows up, he's in this form of the guy that she drew and she dreams of. And so every so often on their anniversary, the anniversary of when they made that deal, he'll show up.
Sometimes he showed up even more frequently in the very beginning, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like towards the end, she was talking about how it was like 40 years or 25 years between visits. So
it's been 300 years between the start of this book and where the present day takes place.
Right.
And for most of that time, except for when they would have a big span when he wasn't showing up, he would come every year, ask her, are you ready to surrender to me? Are you tired of this life?
Yeah.
Because he gave her forever life. Basically, so if she gets injured, the injury wipes away. If she tries to draw or paint something, it wipes away. She can't have any effect with her physical person.
Right. In fact, it also discussed when she went to, was it Le Mans? When she went to Le Mans? What?
I don't care about these places' names. It doesn't matter.
Anyhow,
right?
when she went to the one town, she tried to steal that saddlebag, and she got caught.
Yeah.
And they all were rushing after her.
Yeah.
And they had her pinned, and she stabbed the one guy in the leg to get away.
Uh-huh.
And she gets away, and after she gets out of line of sight, they start to forget about her, and you can see his leg healing up.
His?
His.
Oh, I thought it was hers that was healing up.
Well, no, like she cannot have any lasting effect on anything either.
Yeah.
So, the other thing is like she can't write her name.
Yeah.
She can't write it. She say it. She can't anything that like she writes down instantly disappears if it happens at all, if it even happens.
She can't live anywhere. Like, she can't have residence. She can't even really have belongings. Right. Whenever she starts collecting things, they'll just, like, disappear.
She's like, it'll have a fire. There'll be a flood.
And so if you imagine living for 300 years, being transient for 300 years, and she's out in the cold, and she has to suffer through the cold because it's not going to kill her.
Right.
So she just suffers every single day, basically.
Yeah.
So he comes back every year and says, are you sick of this yet? But one of the best things about Addie is she is incredibly stubborn, and she's not going to give in.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, like, even during her weak points, like, just seeing him and her conversations with him actually inspires her to get her resolve back.
Yeah.
So, there were a couple of times in the book where she talked about how she was really low and what would she do if he showed up then and, blah, 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 and then he'd show up.
Yeah.
And
so sometimes this god Luke that she calls him, sometimes he comes and he tries to entice her as a lover. Sometimes he comes and he's just really mean and vicious with her and tries to scare her. He always has like a different tactic that he's trying to play, and sometimes she'll fall for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes she'll be disgusted with him. Sometimes she'll actually like him around. But so he is a very ever-present piece of this book, so I wanted to talk about it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it too, like if you had no ties to anything at all.
Yeah.
And there was one person, no matter how bad they were, that was a tie for you. wouldn't you be kind of drawn and gravitated to them?
Yeah.
In some ways.
But he's like such a jerk too. Like the one lady that Tim was talking about, where she got the in with her, where she kept following her down the path and got an in and got to go to the salon, and she got like a nice dress or something.
Yeah.
And then he pointed her out, and he's like, "Look, she's a fraud. She did something or whatever.
She stole your dress."
So the god can like come in and always
just ruin it for her.
But he can always just like plant himself in whatever society, and he always fits. Things go well for him. He gets whatever he wants, and then he'll just like mess her up all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there any other main thing we need to say before we introduce the next main character?
I don't know. I think that's pretty much Addie in a nutshell. The next person that's main to the scene.
So you meet like 3 of her main relationships in the present, and the next time we jump back, we're going to meet this next new person.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're back in the present again, and we're meeting a guy named Henry Strauss.
Strauss, yeah.
Strauss.
Like the composer.
Yes. And Henry is Jewish, and he was going to rabbi school.
Well, he was a theology major.
Right. I think
that's different.
Well, according to the book, he was on his way to becoming a rabbi.
Oh.
But anyhow, he was going to school as a theology major, and that didn't quite fit for him. The dean actually asked him to leave because it seemed like he wasn't really, initially he was all gung-ho with it, and it just kind of dwindled for him. So we meet Henry. He's at a bookstore, and it's called The Last Word. And like I said earlier, Addie loves books. So when Remy introduced her to that book by Voltaire, it just ignited her. And so she has gone through, out the last 300 years, learning to read, write, and speak dozens of languages. And every time she comes across a book she hasn't read, she'll grab it and read it and then bring it back without anybody knowing. And she's read some of them like a lot of times, like the Odyssey was one. And that's where Henry actually meets Addie. She shows up in his shop, and the one thing about Henry is everybody seems to adore him, right? He's like, everybody listens to him, they laugh at everything he says, they pay attention, hang on his every word. And when Addie shows up, she grabs a Greek
version of the
Odyssey, and she goes to steal it. And he comes running after her, and he's like, stop, thief. And anyhow, so the two of them get to talking, and he's like, you know what, whatever, it's fine, just take the copy, and no big deal. And he goes back in. And so she thinks that's the end of it. Well, she brings that copy of the Odyssey back the next day because she's finished with it. Pretty voracious reading appetite, huh? She brings it back the next day, and she gets in line and she goes, yeah, so I got this book from a friend who bought it for me, and I don't remember what her excuse was. And she's like, I'd like to return it.
I already have this, so I'd like to get something else instead.
Right. And he's like, we are not a library, lady. you can't just like steal a book and then bring it back and get a new one. And she's like,
what?
She's flabbergasted because no one in 300 years has remembered her.
Yeah, not even day to day,
yeah.
Minute to minute, they don't remember her.
Right. And this kid remembers her from yesterday.
Yeah.
And
she's like, you must be mistaken.
Yeah. And he's like,
No.
This is crazy.
And his coworker, doesn't she come up at that point and she's like, oh, hi. And he's like, this is that lady that stole from us yesterday. And she's like, I don't remember.
I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's funny, too, because that girl, Beatrice, they call her B throughout the book, never remembers her the whole way through the book.
Yeah.
But what's funny about it is, like, she says the same thing every single time. She's like, you are such a timeless beauty, right? Like, and that's how she's like, wow, every time. And so now Addie is like, oh my goodness, what is going on? I need to figure out more about this. So she invites Henry out for a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And they go on this date to get a cup of coffee. And she realizes she has enough money to buy one cup of coffee. So she buys him a cup and brings it over and sits it down. And he's like, what's going on? Why do you not have coffee?
Are you poisoning me?
And she's like, oh, I didn't have enough money on me. And he's like, oh. So he goes and he buys her a cup of coffee and a croissant. And they get to talking and they kind of hit it off. And, Addie's like really excited about this because no one in 300 years remembers her. Mm-hmm. And
isn't she able to tell him her name?
Yes, she was able to tell him. She is able to tell him her name, but I don't think he does it at first.
Her name is Adeline, and she's able to tell him her name is Addie.
Well, first she calls herself Anna.
Because she never uses her real name with people.
And anyhow, so she ends up at some point telling him her real name, and that just it even makes it even more special for her because she hasn't been able to say her own name in 300 years. And so they decide to go out the next night, and that's where she was able to tell him her name, and just I forget where they went.
I don't know, but she doesn't tell him her whole story yet, right?
No, she didn't tell him the whole story yet. In fact, I don't think that happens for a little while. One thing to also note about Addie is, if you remember me telling you about that little wooden ring, that and a leather jacket are the only two possessions that she cannot lose.
And she's always finding the ring in her pocket, and she's always trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, she'll like throw it away, and then the next time she'll just find it in her pocket. So, so those are the only two things that she actually has.
At this point, we do know a little bit about Henry, don't we? About his past.
We know very little.
Well, we know he's had a troubled past and that he struggles with depression.
Right.
And that he struggled with substance abuse.
And the reason for that is one of the things that confused me about Henry was they were talking about like how they had to fix his heart as a baby. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm wondering if that was physical or emotional or...
No, that was physical.
And then it talks about how after that emotions were really intense for him, and to the point where he couldn't really handle them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do know at this point was that he had been dating a girl named Tabitha, and
he thought they were in love.
He thought they were in love, and they were meant to be. And one of the things Addie finds in his room was the ring and a bloody handkerchief or something.
Yeah, hanky.
And then we find out that it was because he had proposed to her, and she said, "No, you're not."
You're not the one.
Yeah, you're not enough, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he was in a depressed funk. Trying to think where I want to go from here.
Mm-hmm. It's hard because it jumps around everywhere.
It does. Why
don't you tell them a little bit about B and Robbie, Henry's best friends?
Okay, so Robbie is one of his best friends, Henry's best friends. And Robbie is a
Actor.
I was going to say theater major, but I think
Oh, this
he's
is in New York,
now.
by the way.
Yeah, it's in New York. And Beatrice is still a college student.
Yeah.
She's trying
to figure out her thesis.
She's trying to figure out her thesis, and she's mad because every time she presents one, the professor's like, no, that's too esoteric, or that's this or that or the other. And B is always at this shop. And one thing about
she
the
works
shop,
there.
Does she?
Yeah.
I don't think she does.
She does.
Because remember, he's always like, this is not a library.
Oh, I really thought she worked there.
So she like helps him sometimes by running it.
Oh.
But the owner is like off on vacation like all the time. She just whatever. Retired basically, and so Henry runs the shop while it's open. And he has B fill in for him sometimes. And it's funny too, because remember when I said about the art? One of the things that Beatrice is like, so I think I found my new thesis. And it's like, look at the women, the drawings of these women, and in all these, there's like 9 different art pieces. And she's like, all of them have 7 freckles on their face.
That was her that said that?
Yeah.
Oh, like throughout time, she was looking at these pieces of art?
Yeah.
I did not catch a
So she had like a stack of books, and she brings them up, and she's like, look, I'm going to do this. And Henry's like, if the teacher said that this subject was too esoteric, what makes you think he's going to okay that? And she's like, crap, you're right. So then she puts them all back. But at that point, you understand that in the 300 years she's been alive, she has met a lot of artists and been friendly with them, and they have actually been able to remember enough about her.
Yeah, she's inspired
to draw
them.
her. Yeah, she's been their muse.
She's figured out like the parameters of her curse.
Right.
And one of them is, even though she's an artist in her heart, she can't actually do any art.
Right.
So, but she can inspire other people
and influence.
And so that's like one of her hobbies, is to like discover the world, find artists, and influence them.
Right.
She's the original influencer.
She's the muse. Literally, that's what they,
So B and Robbie, they're college friends, and Robbie and Henry dated.
Yes, in high school.
In high school and college?
It said high school, I thought.
Oh, I really thought it was college. Anyway, before he was with Tabitha, a period in the past he was with Robbie, and Robbie broke up with him because he didn't know who he was. He was just kind of floundering in life.
Right.
And that's kind of Henry's MO. He just doesn't know what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's very relatable when you get to the end of college and you're like, I still don't know what I'm supposed to do. But really, you're only 22 years old, and people don't really know what they want to do when they're 22 years old. So, but he feels like a disappointment to everybody. He's letting down his family because he hasn't finished his theology major, and
he's working in a bookstore, and so his whole family kind of looks down at him. His brother is a doctor. His sister is what was she?
She's an artist.
Curator or something.
Like that. So why don't we go ahead and move to where she tells Henry her story? Because I feel like that's the next big chunk of this book.
Okay.
Was there anything in between there?
Don't we learn about Henry?
Not yet.
I thought we did.
Oh, really?
I thought we learned a little bit about it.
Well, because she starts to tell him, and she's like, and I don't understand why you can see me or know me, and he's like, because I'm also cursed.
Yeah, so, and then we do get into it. You're right. So, they're at this, on one of their dates, and she decides she's going to come clean as she can. And, she tells him her full name. She tells him where she's actually from and that she's 300 years old. And, he's like taking it well, and she's filling in the blanks, and he starts laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Why are you laughing? I thought you wouldn't believe me." And he's like, "No, I believe you that you're cursed because I am too."
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a bit of background from him that he is cursed. That anyhow, after the Tabitha turned him down because he wasn't enough, he got drunk, he got high. I mean, he was on a lot of different pills and stuff, and drinking, and he ended up in an alley sitting on the stoop, and a stranger came up to him and offered him a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry took it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now everybody who sees him, they basically see what they want to see.
Yeah, he wanted to be enough. So now he's enough for everybody.
For everybody. And he's enough because everybody sees what they want to see.
Yeah, and at first you're like, oh, this is pretty good. Like, I can get what I want everywhere I go because I'm what everybody wants whenever I meet them.
And at first, like, he lives it up a bit. And then it kind of dawns on him that, like, they don't really want him. He just seems in their eyes to be what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really him that they want, it's a certain thing, and it's not him, but...
So it's all twisted because now he's actually good enough for nobody because no, there's not going to be a genuine feeling from anybody.
Yeah.
And in fact, everybody gets like this foggy glazed over eye when they're looking at him, and so he can tell literally every person he encounters that they're like zombies around him, and they're just going to say whatever.
And that's one of the reasons why he hit it off with Addie, because Addie didn't get that fog when she was talking to him.
Yeah, when they first met, he was like, whoa.
Yeah, you're the only one not to get a fog with me. So, they start going through the paces with doing, the different things. Addie starts telling him about her past.
Yeah.
And he's writing it down, verbatim from her past.
So they're just like enjoying life together. He invites her to live with him, and they discover that she can take his hand and write whatever she wants to write in the book.
Right.
She could draw what she wants to draw. She could write what she wants to write, and it won't go away after she stops. And so then from there spurns this thing where they start these journals, and they accumulate her life story. And so she starts telling him from the very beginning, and she starts journaling
the whole
her
way
experiences. And one thing she says about Henry is he's always just like, he's just like manic to like do everything as fast as he can, and he can never sit still. And she's always
he doesn't ever want to do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Right? So she's like, he'll be like, oh, we could go here, and she'll be like, oh, okay, that sounds okay.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, have you done that before?
Yeah.
And if she says yes, he's like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
He just wants to constantly do new things. And that's what's nice, too, because Addie is always looking for something new to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mixed in through these are episodes where you get flashbacks to like a speakeasy in Chicago where she ends up meeting the stranger, the god again.
So for a while the flashbacks were more about like struggling through the 1740s, struggling through the 1790s. Like it was like time period struggles that she was going through. And then it starts to be when she's telling Henry about the flashbacks, it's like flashbacks with the god Luke.
Right.
Because now they have this in common. It was the same person. Even though he looked different to each of them, now she's telling him about all of her experiences with him.
They don't know that it was the same god yet.
I thought that they did.
No, they don't find that out.
Why wouldn't they think it was the same person?
I don't know. I don't know.
Huh.
But
I'm pretty sure
they find out later. Because, well, I'll get to that.
Don't they both talk about how when they sealed the thing, they kissed and they had the bloody lips and stuff?
No, he only did that with her.
Oh.
The blood for him was, remember the bottle of vodka broke and he had the bloody hand?
Oh.
That's where the handkerchief came from?
Hmm. And she has the ring.
The ring, and he has a watch.
Yeah, so they have like a momentum from that binding contract.
Correct.
Yeah. So she's telling him about the different times that Luke has tried to persuade her over and over and over to surrender. So you were saying Chicago.
Right, there was Chicago. We find out later on there was one in New Orleans where she finally gets a home. Mm-hmm. And he gives her a key to this house, and it's her house.
So we learned that there's a space of 40 years where he didn't come for their anniversary. And then we finally at the end learned why. And it's because when she was in New Orleans, he came and he tried persuading her to surrender with love.
Right.
So he tried pretending that he was in love with her, and she fell in love with him. He got her a house. He was treating her really nicely, and they were living together, and they were just together all the time. But that went very badly.
Yes.
And that's why wasn't it before that he was like, I'm not going to come unless you call me? They also had a period of time where she didn't call him on the anniversary too, right?
Right. And I think that was after, I skipped a part where he takes her to go see Mozart.
Oh, yeah. So he takes her to go see these other people because he's made contracts with, like, everybody.
Yeah, a lot of people. And
specifically all the famous artists.
Yes.
Because he grants them, like, brilliance in whatever they want, but then there's always a price to pay.
Right.
So he took her to go visit Beethoven. Yes, it was Beethoven. And he's like, hey, your time's up. No, it's Beethoven. And he's like, okay, your time's up. And so Beethoven's like, no. And she watches him fold the guy into his robe thing or whatever and just disintegrate him.
Yeah.
So is it after that she didn't talk to him for a while?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. She was actually scared to talk to him.
What about the time when he was just like turned into an actual monster?
Well, that was during
that was that one?
That was that one. Yeah.
Okay.
And so anyhow, where were we?
So in New Orleans, he slips up, and in one like lover's embrace, he's like, well, you surrender to me? And she's like, surrender? You haven't said that in like 4 years or whatever, because weren't they together for like a long time at that point? It was
a while at that point.
Yeah. And she's like, you had tricked me. I thought we were falling in love and you were just doing this. And she always talks about his different shade of green of his eyes, which I thought was a really cool part of this book because his emotions were manifesting in the different color of green of his eyes. And she was very observant and could always tell how he was feeling and in their encounters, and they would change as they would have their encounters. And she's a Spitfire, so she's always ready to just give it right back to him whenever she feels that he's not being kind, which is never. But so anyway, she discovers that he was trying to trick her, and he is like, you didn't think I would try something else after all this time? Right. And so then she's so mad, so she burns down their house.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't see him for 40 years because he's not going to come unless she calls him, right?
Yep.
She has to put the ring on her finger.
Yeah, because that was like in the 60s, I think.
70s.
Yeah. Because she got that's where the leather jacket I'd mentioned came from.
Oh, yeah. He bought her a leather jacket. Or bought her.
Well, he stole it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
so, yeah, at one point, she and the god were in a relationship, and they were, like, together.
Right.
So, but we don't find that out until the very end.
Right, we do. So now we're with Henry. He's talking about it. He's also telling us, like, we do flashbacks to the year before when he made his deal. Talks about all the different changes in people, how Robbie still loves him now.
Robbie, like, loves him.
Yeah.
But it's not really him.
Right. And the only one that actually tells him anything in that year without glazing over is Beatrice.
She still glazes over.
She glazes over on a lot of things, But at the one point, he asked her a question, and why she liked him.
She says, because you're my friend.
Because you're my
but
best
then,
friend.
She goes, and you're so patient, and you're so kind, and you're my best friend, and all this stuff. So then he knows it's not real.
Well, the best friend part was real, but then she elaborates, and everything she elaborates was not real. And so, he's really bummed out about that. And, he goes and has dinner with his family for a change, and they're all completely different. They're, oh, you're my best friend, you're my buddy, you're my, we're so proud of you. And he's like, I've never heard that before, And so then we get a little bit after that. We're back with the couple, and they're in New York still, and it's the evening of their anniversary again.
Addie's
and Lucas's, and Addie doesn't want anything to spoil her day with.
She doesn't want Luke to see that she's happy with
somebody else,
because then he'll ruin it.
Right. And so her and Henry go, and they're having fun during the day, just hanging out. And something happened. Somebody fall asleep or something? And when he woke up, then Addie was like, you know what? I don't even care. I haven't seen him in 40 years. I'm not going to see him tonight. So let's just go have fun. And they go out to a bar, and Henry orders 2 beers. And the bartender brings back a beer and a champagne with a rose petal in it. And that is Lucas's signature for Addie.
Well, it's like it's been done before in the past.
Right. And so Addie's like, oh no, this is not happening. And all of a sudden, everybody in the bar freezes, and Lucas walks up, and he's like talking to her, and she's like, finally I'm happy, or something like that. She's something like that. And Lucas is like, what? Did you think you found him by accident?
Mm-hmm.
No, I own him too.
And I did it on purpose.
And she's like, what? And then you find out that the entire story of when he sold his soul, Henry did, he was about to commit suicide because he was on all those drugs and stuff from being turned down by Tabitha. And he was going to commit suicide, and Lucas stopped it and offered him a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I know about the deal. And he goes, yeah, but you didn't think it was forever, did you?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, wait, what do you mean?
And he was kind of like, enjoy that while it lasts.
Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. And, human lives are so short. And then you finally get the story from Henry that he was given a year.
Mm-hmm.
And the year is going to be up in 36 days. And so now Addie is like all upset, and
she feels terrible because she knows that Luke did that to get back at her.
Right.
And so if it weren't for her, he wouldn't be cursed.
Right. And so
Henry basically says, I would have done it anyway. Like,
even for a minute.
Yeah. And so he's like, don't feel bad for me. Let's just enjoy our next 36 days.
Yeah. So he's like, okay with it. She decides to try and rebargain. And
Henry's like, don't do that. It's not going to do any good.
Anyhow, so Luke offers a deal to her that he'll reconsider if she spends their anniversary together.
Uh-huh.
And she says, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Henry's like, you don't have to do this. I'm fine. It'll be okay. And she's like, no, I have to do this because
It's my fault.
It's my fault. And so she goes to meet Luke, and they go out to dinner, and she like brings up the subject of Henry, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that right now. We're doing this. And she brings it up again, and he's just like, no, we're not doing this. And then he takes her somewhere. I can't remember where he took her. Remember they left the restaurant?
Did you take her to Central Park?
He does. He does take her to
Because she
Central
told him,
Park.
she's like, the rules of this night is you can't take me to a different place.
Right.
And there was another rule.
Well, he wasn't supposed to take her through the darkness.
Yeah. So he can teleport her places, and she finds out it's actually because she's inside of him.
Yeah.
In the darkness.
And she doesn't like that. And so she tells him, like, these are the ground rules. And he agreed to it, but in the end, he goes back on it, and he takes her through the darkness and drops her off in Central Park.
Yeah, I don't remember why.
Well, so then she goes back to Henry's apartment, and she finds out it's been 6 days.
Well, they go somewhere else for a while. They go to, like, this exclusive club on a rooftop or something. They go somewhere where they're all alone for a while, and then they're just talking.
You're right.
Right?
You're right. They do. They go to this, one of his hotel, or one of the skyscrapers that has the best view out of the city.
His private. We learned that not only is he the one that, like, owns all these famous artists and stuff, but he's the one that inspires, like, speakeasies and clubs and stuff.
Kind of like Lucifer.
Yeah, kind of.
In the show Lucifer.
So then he drops her off in Central Park.
Yeah, and it's 6 days after they started. And
she realizes, and she's like, oh my gosh, he probably thought I left him.
Yeah.
And I just wasted all this time, so now she's really mad.
Yeah. And so she goes back, and Henry lets her in, and, they start doing stuff, and...
Isn't it during their night together that he says to her, like, the reason I did this was to show you that human love is going to just be gone, but you're not even human anymore. You should be with someone like me, because we could actually be together forever. And I wanted to show you that this isn't what you want, that you actually want me.
Right.
Was it during that time, or was it during the Louisiana time?
I think it was during that time.
Okay.
It might have been.
She's like, no, I will never love you.
Well, I know he tells her several times that she's not human.
Yeah, and she just is like, no, I will never love you. I'll never be with you. Da 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 da. And so then that's when he gets mad.
Yeah.
And then he teleports her. So she runs back home to Henry, and Henry he's like not mad at her, and he just hugs her, and he's like, let's just enjoy our time together. It's okay.
And so they're enjoying their time together, and they say at one point they're sleeping. I don't remember if it was like the day before, because it kind of
3 or 4 days before.
Because it kind of jumps, like you don't get any of that filler from day 30 to day 2 left. And Henry wakes up in the middle of the night because he hears Addie walking down the hall, and he falls back to sleep, not thinking any more of it. When he wakes up in the morning, she's still there. So then
we're on the last day, and he's like, I need to say my goodbyes.
Yeah.
So he starts doing that.
Yeah, he starts doing that. He goes by and sees everybody, and he can't really say goodbye because no one knows he's leaving.
Yeah.
And, he makes his peace with them. And then we go back to where it started for Henry on the roof of that building, and that's when Luke shows up, and we find out that the watch is
like a timer.
Yeah, it's about to hit midnight, which means his time is up.
Oh, they go back to the roof where the contract happens. Him and Addie together.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're together.
And they're expecting him to show up and take him away or whatever.
Right. And so when Luke shows up, Henry's like, I'm ready. And Addie's like, oh, ho, ho. I don't think so. and she pulls out. We do a flashback to the night where she snuck out, and she made a deal with a second deal, basically, because at some point he said something about he might be able to modify the contract, and so she uses that to say, well, how about we modify the contract that I have? You release Henry from his, and I will stay by your side. I will stay with you until you no longer want me by your side.
Because that's what he's been telling her for the last few interactions. That's what he wants. I want you. You're mine.
Right. And so he agrees. So Henry gets his life back, but Addie and Luke disappear.
Yep, they just disappear, and Henry's like...
They just disappear, and Henry's like kind of heartbroken.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm sure relieved as well, because he's not going to die.
Yeah.
But, and we're like towards the very end of the book now. Towards the end.
So there's like a jump forward now.
So, we jump forward 6 months. Beatrice is reading a book. And she slams it down on the table, and she's like, Henry, you can't end it like that. And basically what it is he took all of those notes that took, the journals, and wrote them into a book. And he's like, I thought about putting in different endings, but none of them made sense for her because I don't know her ending.
They would all been fiction.
Yeah.
So he ends it basically where we just ended it.
Where we ended it, right. Yeah. The very end, Addie is in a bookstore, and she sees The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue.
No author.
No author, no decorations, nothing on it. And she's like looking at it, and Luke is with her, and
it's become like a bestseller.
Right.
Yeah. And what's Beatrice doing her thesis on?
I don't remember, but she finally got something approved.
It's the pictures of the pictures that Addie took. Where he tried to take pictures of her, and then she took a picture of her own leg or something.
Yeah, so he tried to take Polaroid pictures of Addie. Yeah. Henry did, and they were all like blurry. It looked like somebody was moving or something. And then Addie, so Henry took and was holding the camera, and Addie pointed the camera down and took a picture of her own feet with those other pictures in the picture.
And why would Beatrice think that would make a good thesis? I don't remember why that's a thesis.
Because it's supposed to be. It turned out that it was like a really remarkable shot because the way that it developed, you shouldn't have been able to do with a Polaroid.
Well, anyway, I was thinking in my mind that was more significant than it was. So she's in the bookstore. She sees that people are into this book. She's kind of thumbing through it. And then behind her... Yeah,
Luke shows up, and he's talking to her, and he's like, you really did actually...
Yeah. And they're back like lovey-dovey right now, and he's like, oh, you're such a clever girl, and you did this. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad we're together, and he's like pulling her away.
Yeah, and then you go to her thoughts, and she's thinking... Well, yes, but in that contract, you've taught me that words have meaning. And you said we agreed to as long as you wanted me by your side. And someday you'll tire of me.
Yeah, because she knows that over the last 300 years, they've gotten in fights and stuff.
Yeah.
And as soon as he doesn't want her around him anymore because she's going to piss him off and she's going to make him real angry at some point, she'll be free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it ends with her being like, she has more game to play. She hasn't really been bested by letting Henry have his life back. Now she's got her new goal, and it's this new chess game they're playing.
Yep. And that's the life of the invisible life of Addie LaRue.
So like I said, was alike until the end, and I just really loved the way she wrapped it up.
Yeah.
Because you know it was going to end sadly. Like, they weren't just going to be able to... I mean, I felt like that.
Yeah.
And for a while, Henry's kind of mysterious, and for a while you're kind of like, is he actually Luke?
I know, I thought
because
the same thing.
Because they look alike.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought he was a cross between Harry Potter and Luke.
Yeah, so it's very mysterious, especially with the jumping back and forth, because you don't know everything. But, I mean, it was good. I've read a number of other books by this author, and this was like a totally different take, because I don't think her other ones were more about magicians and stuff that I read, and people with like superpowers and stuff. And this was the first one that was more like gods and time traveling and things, so I know. So it was interesting, and I recommend. Do you recommend?
Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
I was going to say, would you read anything else by this author? But I already know that she's written a bunch of great stuff. She wrote Vicious, and she wrote that one where the magician travels between, like, gray London, white London, red London. Do you remember reading that?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, she's pretty awesome, and she's written a lot of different things.
Yeah,
so.
I enjoyed it. I did.
Yeah.
It was worth a read.
Okay. Well, what can they expect in our next episode?
In the next episode, Phoebe is actually going to detail out for us Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Dial of Destiny.
Not Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah. So we went to go see that in the theater. We had a good time.
We did.
We're going to tell you all about it in the next episode.
We will.
So.
We will.
If you've read this book, let us know down below what your thoughts are, or if you're going to read it. Whatever comment you want to leave for us today,
Any books you would recommend?
What do you want us to read next?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for subscribing to the channel, for liking the video, for joining us today, and we'll see you back for another one very soon.
Can't wait.
Okay, bye.
Bye.